I get the question a lot, Tony, how do you teach your children about money and how to be responsible? And it's a really difficult question. And so in this video, I'm just gonna walk you through how I do it. There is no right or wrong. I've seen a lot of different ways of doing it and going about it. And ultimately, I've read quite a few books on it as well. And so what I'm about to tell you is going to be contradictory to a lot of different books, and it's going to be in line with other books. But ultimately, I'll just tell you what we do, why we do it, and why it works for us. Now, I think it's also fair to say we have slowly made tweaks to how we do it over time when things aren't quite working right. So the goal for us as parents, me and my wife, is we're trying to help our kids to recognize that money doesn't grow on trees and that they need to be good stewards over what they have. And at the same time, we just want them to be thinking every time they decide to make a purchase or want to do something silly or responsible. We just want them to think about it and not just say, oh, mom and dad are going to pay for that, right? We feel like they can't learn anything if they just say mom and dad are going to pay for that. So here's what we do. So we have two different components. Let me throw this out there first. We have a separate fund that we have put aside, that we fund every month, that is earmarked for their lives, whether it's education, marriage, their careers. We have money set aside for that. And they don't know about that money, and we have the ability to change our minds on it because it's not in their names, nothing. But it is set aside and invested. So that is separate. So I'm not gonna cover that in this particular one. This particular one is all about how do we help our kids now to make decisions and think through money. So, and for context, as of now, I have young kids. I've got a 12-year-old, a almost 9, and a 6-year-old. So here's how we do it. So, and I'll just kind of show you, it's the components. So there's kind of like, they each get a base, I'm just gonna call it a base salary. That's not what we call it to them, but for this video, I'm gonna call it that. Now the base salary, and this is where some of the books would contradict me, and they don't like this, but ultimately, in order to live in our household, there's all sorts of stuff that has to be done. They've gotta clean their bathrooms, they've gotta clean their rooms, they've gotta put away their laundry, they've gotta do their homework, they've gotta practice their instruments, they've got to practice on the sports that they're in that time. All of those we track every week. They have to do all those things. And as long as they do all those things, they get their base salary. Now for us, we do $1 per year old per week. So for example, if your son or daughter's 10 years old, they would get $10 per week to make sure all those things are done. Now, there are weeks that our kids, they just don't want to do it, or they don't, or whatever it is, and they do not get paid. So they don't get it, but we also don't want to fight with them every time. So it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally just doesn't happen. And sometimes just because it's just so busy of a week. And in those moments, they don't get paid. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because if you look at this, and let's just take a 10-year-old, for example. Well, out of the $10 that 10-year-old would get in my household, they have 50% that goes towards spend. They have 40% that goes towards save, and they have 10% that goes towards charity. So here's what that means. That means that on that 10 bucks, 5 of it goes into their spending account, 4 of it goes into their savings account, and 1 of it goes into their charity account. Now, what are each one of these things for? Well, the spending account is just that. They can spend that money on the things that they need on a weekly basis. Now, it's harder, the younger they are, the harder this one is. As our older one has got older, so she'll be 12 soon. Well, in that case, it's actually been really nice because she has money set aside to where, she has, if her and her friends wanted to walk down the street from dance to get dinner between classes, she can do that, and she has her own money and she can make that decision. Well, And at the same time, some of our two youngers, they don't have as many of those opportunities to just need money randomly. And so it's a little bit harder when they're younger, but ultimately it can kind of still work to where, maybe you stop at a gas station on your way out of town. Well, what typically happens? Mom and dad typically, buy that candy bar or that drink or something, whatever it is. We don't do that anymore. So if they want those things, they have to use their own money to buy it. And I have to tell you, since we implemented this program, the way they view that purchase at that gas station is completely different. In fact, every now and again, we will say, hey, we'll throw in $1 on this trip. And so what's happened over time now is like my son, for example, will say, Dad, are you guys kicking in at all on this trip? And if we say no, there's a lot of times he buys nothing because he doesn't want to spend his own money. And if we say, yeah, we'll kick in $2, he's like super excited. And so you kind of have to navigate that on your own. But so that's the spending category. Then you've got the saving category. The saving category, we will give them access to the saving category once they turn 13, and everything has to be approved through us. So as they have money sitting in savings and they want to go buy this or that, it has to be something they ask us, we approve it, they can go get it. Our goal is that this money grows and it has some value when they turn 16, because our goal is that when you turn 16, we will match whatever you put towards your first car. And so we're trying to help them have some money for that scenario. Starting at 13, if they decide they just keep spending that money, it's going to be hard for them to have any money to buy a car when they're 16. And at the same time, pretty self-explanatory, trying to really instill in our kids that, giving back is really important. And so 10% of everything that they get automatically goes to a charity of their choice. Right now, most of it goes to our church, which is where they decide to put it. So ultimately, this is kind of the base framework for a base salary. And the whole the thing that's been cool for us is just watching our kids think about every purchase they make. I don't want them to have money issues, like emotional issues as they get older. That is not the goal. But I do want them to be thinking and recognize that there is a decision that has to be made every time something is purchased. And it doesn't have to be a stressful decision, and it doesn't have to have any regrets, but it does have to be thought through. And there is a consequence to that purchase in every way, shape, and form. So I want them to be thinking that through. Now, as you can imagine, their spending category doesn't exactly get big. And so your kids, at least our kids, they'll say to themselves, or they'll say to us, I really want to save for this. Well, it's going to take forever for them to save for that through this channel, especially like an 8-year-old. That's $4 a week, and that's assuming he spends none of it, right? So it'd take forever, take a really long time. So what we've done is we have a separate section, and this is, we just call them value creators. And so value creators, we have a list of activities that they can do to create more value in our home life. And so, every parent can think through this, and you can say, okay, what I really want to do is, what I'm sick of doing is I'm sick of pulling weeds. That's like, we pull weeds all the time. Well, that needs to be a value creator, right? Because we want to train our kids to be thinking about how do we provide value. Because our hope, and this is from some books I've read, is the hope is that if they can be trained in bringing value to our little family, imagine if that can just stay with them as they move on in life. And, well, now as they bring more and more value to different people and careers, hopefully they're really valuable and they can have careers that are really meaningful and impactful for them. And hopefully they're paid well. So every family is going to have different value creators. For us, I'll just give you an example. So we've got weed pulling is on there. We have clean pool. So just cleaning our pool. We've got mopping main floor. We've got vacuuming. So there's a lot of different things, but what we do then is we provide a dollar amount for every type of these activities. And so the dollar amount that we assign to each of these activities is how much we would be willing to pay them. And so this is how they can actually save for something that they really want. And they recognize that it's not just gonna come from mom and dad all the time. They have the power and the ability to do some of these things. Now, this is a new part of our family fiscal plan. This is something that we've learned and changed, and so this is the new way that we are doing it. And so I'm really excited because this list is going to be posted, and they can, whenever they have free time, if they really are saving for something, they have the ability and the choice to go out and do some of these things to help save that money. So I'm going to go back to one more thing here. So this gets a little complex if you're trying to do it on your own and you have multiple kids. Now, for us, there's an app that does this all automatically once it's all set up. And that app is actually called Greenlight. And Greenlight's been pretty awesome for us because when they get paid each week, which I can turn that payment on or off based on if they actually did what they were supposed to. If they didn't do what they're supposed to, it's a click of a button and none of these funds get dispersed. But if they did, and it's called allowance on the app, you click it on, and it's all preset. So if a 10-year-old, it's set at $10 per week, well, then it automatically on Monday morning shoots out into these percentages inside of their own personal app. And so what's great too is it helps them learn responsibility because they can go into the app and they can see how much money they have in each one of these categories. And it just helps them keep track too and stay accountable to the things that they're doing. So that's another great way if you need something to help you stay organized. Greenlight has been really helpful for us. I hope this video was helpful. If you like it, share, subscribe, and maybe this is even something that if you're sitting here and you're a grandparent, maybe this is something you can share with your kids who are dealing with this with their kids. Have a good one.